Ukraine may have a new leader soon. The head of Ukraine's protest movement has proposed Arseniy Yatsenyuk as the new prime minister. Yatsenyuk has been a top figure in the protests against President Viktor Yanukovych. The president fled this week after anti-government protests have been raging for 3 months. With us tonight to look more closely at these stories and others is Congressman Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska. Congressman Fortenberry, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be with you.
The situation in Afghanistan, is the president saying that we could pull completely out of Afghanistan if there is an agreement, a security agreement? Do you see that as a bluff, political posturing, or is this for real?
Well, it's a very delicate, complex situation with President Karzai refusing to engage with us after all the sacrifice that we've made for him and the stability of that country, the lives we've lost, the treasure we've poured into that. This is a real insult to America, and it's not in the best interest of Afghanistan. So I think the issue here is perhaps to buy some time to let the next president potentially engage with us, to maybe not completely say we're going to pull out, but to have that as an option if things begin to collapse and there's a future government that can't be dealt with, but to remain with a viable option of having a troop presence there into the future for stability. Now, the real question is, what level of troop presence do you have? If it's too small, it can't protect itself and help the Afghan national forces who are going to lead in this effort to stabilize the country. If it's too big, it creates security risk for ourselves, and that's the delicate balance that is trying to be had here. I've had a conversation with the Secretary of Defense about this.
It's gone on such a long time. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Also in the Ukraine, the violence there has become more intense. I mean, there's also talk now, as we just heard, about a possible new leader. Do you think that this could escalate into another Cold War, as we've heard from others?
Well, it certainly is a proxy. The Ukraine is the linchpin between the East and the West. You have strong ethnic sensibilities toward the Russians in the East, toward the Europeans in the West, and this drama is being played out right now in front of us. Obviously, the Russians want this to remain in their sphere of influence. The president who recently fled refused to sign an agreement with the Europeans last fall, and that's what has led to this spiraling effect. The outcome is unknown here, but we're hopeful that the Ukraine can exercise its own right to self-determination, have a strong relationship with Europe and the West, and remain an independent state, a free country.
And finally, here in Washington, the religious freedom debate now at the Supreme Court level.
Well, coming up on March 25th, I believe, is perhaps one of the most important Supreme Court cases in our history. It's quiet, there's not much talk about it, but it really will determine the course for religious freedom and the limits on government coercion in people's lives. In the health care bill, it's been interpreted to allow the government to force employers or healthcare providers, people who are buying insurance for employees, to make them buy certain drugs and procedures that violate the ethical sensibilities, the deeply held reasoned beliefs, or the faith tradition of many, many Americans. And so consequently, you've had many entities out there begin to sue the government. The Little Sisters of the Poor, one of the most prominent ones. I talked to the Mother Superior. She said, we didn't want to sue the government. We just see Christ in the elderly, and that's our mission. The irony of the government forcing the Little Sisters of the Poor to violate their deeply held ethical beliefs in health care when they are the ones providing health care and are the backstop of health care for the poor and vulnerable is real irony. And it's an aggressive assault by our government on a fundamental principle of religious freedom and the rights of conscience.
I've been blessed personally by the Little Sisters. Thank you, Congressman, and we'll have you back on as this develops more.